Good evening. Welcome to the Ashland Planning Board meeting. It is Thursday, August 22nd, 2019, and we are at about 7:15 in the Board of Selectmen's meeting room in Town Hall. We are being recorded and broadcast on WACA cable access, and people may wonder, why do I always announce that at the beginning of the meetings? It turns out under the open meeting law, if the meeting is being recorded, I need to, as chair, inform everyone in attendance that it is being recorded. So now you know, and now you know why I'm in the habit of always saying that at the beginning of all our meetings, for anybody who is curious. And we thank them for doing that. On our agenda tonight, we have a very quick item on the Village at Clocktown. They are withdrawing their current application before us, so that's going to go quickly. The bulk of our meeting is discussing a new project at 81 West Union. This is, I say new project, it is the next phase of the project that is already under construction. I'm sure most people have seen the large building in front of the middle school. This is going to go farther back on that, and we'll talk about this a lot more. We also have a bond acceptance and some other administrative things coming up after that. Before we get any farther, I want to take a personal liberty, and there were some residents who had asked to be on the agenda for an informal discussion of the 12 Pond Street property, and I did not act on that, so that did not get on the agenda. I could go into various excuses of being busy and whatnot, but ultimately that is my fault that that is not on the agenda. And when residents asked to come before the planning board and talk about things, we should put them on the agenda and talk about things. And so I apologize for not doing that. I should have done that. I was, I let people down, and I'm sorry. All right, let's move on ahead. The first item is continuance of a public hearing, Village at Clocktown. This is 12 and 16 Union Street and 1 East Union Street. This is the same parcel, or originally the same parcel where the public safety building is being discussed. This is the portion that was not donated to the town, and Fafford, or the company he controls for this project, had put forth a preliminary subdivision and then was going forward with a subdivision approval that would have several townhouses there. And we have a letter from them saying, at this time, the applicant for Village of Clocktown Project 58 Exchange Ashland LLC respectfully asks to withdraw without prejudice its application for approval of a preliminary subdivision plan. I think the phrase preliminary subdivision plan is a mistake, but clearly they want to withdraw this and potentially in the future submit something different. But I am not surprised. There are a lot of wetlands issues and concerns that we and probably the Conservation Commission had with this project. So, and for people who are following along at home, the phrase "without prejudice" means they're free to resubmit at any time, and that would be the normal way of doing things. So,
just if I can add, Chairman. At the time of resubmittal, there'll be re-advertisement in the newspaper, and there'll be notification to abutters at that time of future applications. And so, without which prejudice doesn't mean that it just kind of shows back up on the agenda at some point. However, they can withdraw the project, and when they resubmit, it continues. It will be re-advertised and reposted.
yeah.
Such as a normal special permit, site plan approval subdivision application.
Just one thing, point of clarification, you said that you didn't believe that the application for an approval of a preliminary subdivision plan is the appropriate term. What is it, what is it?
So they're
exactly?
right now under a special, so the planning board, prior to my arrival, approved a preliminary subdivision plan. I think that was back in the fall of 2019, is that correct? Yeah, no,
No, 18.
18, I'm sorry. So that's already been approved,
It
and
was a
that's fine.
preliminary subdivision.
That's a preliminary subdivision,
I
right?
remember that.
So then they submitted for a site plan special permit,
Okay.
and
So they're
that's,
withdrawing the site plan
they're
special-
withdrawing the site plan special permit.
Okay.
In the conversations that I've had with the applicant and their representatives, they wanted to build 16, senior living housing units with kind of in the Fafford quadplexes, with the master on the top floor. And so I think when you're building senior housing, I know, through conversations I've had, that when you build senior housing, most people are looking for masters on the first floor and or second floor, and not on the third floor. So I think they went back to the drawing board to try to rearrange the architectural in their structures to try to get a more, I would say, try to create a product that would be more acceptable to people looking to move into a senior housing complex.
I would like to get from them an updated letter clarifying that they mean the site plan review and special permit application.
Okay.
Because that is not what they have asked for in this letter.
Yeah, we should be.
So I think the simplest way that'll save us the most time and still follow all the rules correctly is to have a motion to accept the withdrawal of this project, meaning the site plan review and special permit process, pending a letter confirming that is what they are actually requesting.
Okay, I can take care of that.
We would then, we would then have to continue this to a future meeting.
Yep.
And at that meeting, we would just say that this has been withdrawn, and that would be the end of it.
Okay.
So, if there is a motion to accept the withdrawal, subject to a letter confirming the actual withdrawal.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 5-0. We then need to continue this. I assume they can get that to us fairly quickly, so let's just continue this till 7:15 on the second Thursday of September. Is there a motion to that
So
effect?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 5-0.
So the withdrawal is subject to them papering that
Clarifying it.
appropriately,
Yeah.
and then we'll have to take a vote at that meeting on the 12th.
Well, no, if they provide that letter, we've
Yeah.
already accepted it. And so the assumption is when this comes up on the agenda, we'll just announce,
Okay.
this item is now moot because it's been withdrawn.
Yeah. And once that letter, and just for clarification, I probably should have caught that, but once I receive that letter, it will be stamped in with the town clerk, and then it will be official upon that day.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Enough bureaucracy.
Yeah.
On to the next item. Public hearing on 81 West Union Street, Phase 2 site review. The Ashland Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear the petition of 81 West Union Street LLC, care of Peter B. Barberi, Esquire, 70, do I have to read all this? Bartzak Drive, Holliston, Mass. Requesting design plan review and site plan review per Chapter 48, Section 6 of the Massachusetts Zoning Act, and Chapter 282, Sections 9.6 design plan review and 9.4 site plan review of the Ashland bylaws. The applicant is proposing the development of 3 new buildings totaling 26,905 square feet, parking, and stormwater infrastructure, Building 1 is proposed for non-medical office and retail space. The building will be 3 stories in height and have a footprint of 5,620 square feet. Buildings 2 and 3 are proposed contractors' facilities landscaping buildings. The footprint for Building 2 is 8,580 square feet. Building 3's footprint will be 12,705 square feet. Building 2 and Building 3 will be 1 story in height and include a mezzanine space. The proposed project includes the development of parking and stormwater collection system infrastructure. And the plans and all documentation on this are available for review at the planning office during regular town hall business hours, and most of them will also be posted on the town's
I think
webpage.
they already are.
Actually, all all documents submitted by the applicant are actually on the town's webpage, under the planning board current projects. That would include the site plan, the architectural renderings, and the stormwater management report.
And it would be our intention going forward to make that the case with any further documents. As always, if you really want the official documents, come to town hall, and because sometimes things don't get posted.
If people
something
want if people want their own paper copy, please come to town hall. But I think what the number one thing we're trying to do is to be transparent and to make sure that the public can access the documents online and through our town's webpage.
At this time, if the applicant would like to introduce the project to us, this is our first time to hear this, so go ahead.
Okay, for the record, Peter Barbieri, Fletcher Tilton, on behalf of the applicant, 81 West Union Street, and William Rodenhauser. We also have Darren Grady from Grady Consultant, who talk about the civil aspects of the project, and then Jonathan Ward to talk about the architecture of the project. The description in the ad was kind of a good brief overview of the project. So taking it in looking at the plan, particularly for those board members who weren't part of the original approval, West Union Street is at the bottom. The site, a portion of it is shown in white or uncolored, with the large rectangle being the existing storage facility that's substantially completed. Also substantially completed is the little narrow rectangle, which is the entry into that phase 1, as well as to our site. Again, that was approved as part of the phase 1 development. Back to the right of the large building is also a smaller storage building that's part of a previous approval, which no construction has commenced on that yet. So the area that you see on the site is in white is basically the area that's previously approved as part of phase 1. The rest of the colored area is what we're proposing to develop as part of phase 2, which would be the completion development of the site. The large dark green area, that's the existing wetland area. This plan depicts a construction of a retaining wall outside the 25-foot no disturbance zone of that wetland area. We did have one meeting so far with the Conservation Commission. That wetland line, again, was set at the time we went through the phase 1. So the wetland delineations are all set. The Conservation Commission has asked us to look at a couple things, more importantly in the nature of the subsurface drainage system, which Darren will talk a little bit more about, but looking for further testing of the soils to ensure that the system we've designed can meet standards, particularly in regards to depth of the groundwater. Everything is from the drainage system is being controlled on the site, all the roof runoff, all the parking lot runoff. So as was noted, you come in the existing driveway off of West Union Street, which basically is the kind of north-south running. The first building on the right, identified as Building 1, that's a 5,500 square foot footprint building, 3 stories, as noted. That is the commercial retail office part of the project, with at this stage of the game the 3rd floor being a storage facility, basically for dry storage with no employees. There is some anticipation if the second storage building doesn't go, that area becomes available for parking, then we might convert that third floor into something else, but we would come back at that point in time because it would be a site change. So that building has 3 stories. It's basically 44 feet in height. Let me back up for a second. In the nature of all the improvements you see on that site from the viewpoint of the lot itself, as well as the location and size of the buildings, complies in all respects with the requirements of the zoning bylaw, both in the nature of setbacks as well as height limitations. So that's a description of building 1. One of the things that your consultant has asked for is a loading area to that. We're revising the plan based upon your consultant's comments, but we haven't done that yet. Waiting for comments from the boards in the Conservation Commission. We also met with the Design Review Board last night. They made some comments to us in the nature of the architecture. Jonathan will talk more about it, but what we're trying to do is, bearing in mind you're gonna have 4 or 5 buildings potentially on this site, to create some consistency of the architecture within the site, yet understanding what's around it and trying to do something different. So the comments from the Design Review Board was to incorporate some of the elements of the existing architecture for a storage building, but then make it look a little bit more, to some extent, residential. We are carrying roofs on it, and that front building will have an asphalt roof, keeping in mind the residential that are around it. So we're working on more details of the architecture and some different materials to make it, one, consistent with what's taking place on the site, and then consistent with off-site. So we've continued that here until September 12th, planning within the next week, maybe 10 days, getting some revised architecturals to them, and certainly to this board as well. Conservation Commission was also continued. We're in the process of doing some additional soil testing, again, to address the drainage question in the issue of the subsurface systems, which Darren will talk about and show those where they are. So you'd come into the site, you'd turn around to the west of Building 1 and come up to Building 2, which is identified as the one of the contractors' building. That's roughly 8,500 square feet. All the entries to that building in the nature of public and employee access will be, you know, to the back of the site, away from the residences in front. That is a single-story, 40-foot building. Again, all of these buildings have lesser height than the existing storage building. Continuing through the site, you come to Building 3, which is 12,700 square feet. Again, single-story, contractor-type facility. To the west of that, heading off the top of the page, there is a area for storage of materials, and you can see there's little lines there. Those would be the bins for the storage of those materials. We had that discussion with the Concom last week. They just wanted some further protections in the nature of seeing the details for the protection off the wall to the wetland. So if you're looking from the wetland, you come straight across, and then the wall would be up. So we have protections along the cross of that wall for nothing going over into the wetlands, and we're gonna fill out those details a little bit more. From the viewpoint of utilities, they were all brought into the site at the time Phase 1 was constructed, so there's no need to go back out into the site. This proposed use is substantially less than the density and the uses that we have been talking to the town about making use of the site going back when we rezoned the property in 2005, 2006. At that point in time, we were looking at a full mixed-use facility, roughly 35,000 square feet of commercial space and 30 to 40 apartments. We did the calculations with the town back then in the nature of the sewer requirements for that, which was a little over 17,000 gallons per day. The storage building, if you recall the discussion through that, they basically fit under the existing residential because there's no storage or no sewage associated with that. From the viewpoint of this Phase 2 project, we are less than 1,500 gallons per day as compared to the 17,000 that would have been involved with the initial concept. The concept of mixed use in higher stories with the residential is just, at this stage of the game, not feasible. There's nobody in the market is telling us that that's an available use, given the large number of apartments that have gone in right down the street, right at the train station. So we're looking, at this point in time, the need to develop the site. These are the uses which we know would move forward. Again, as noted, we don't have any specific tenants at this point in time, but we're confident from the viewpoint of getting these approvals, we'll find tenants to occupy these buildings. From the viewpoint of traffic coming and going from this development, again, substantially more traffic, both AM, PM, as well as daily traffic from the original proposal. When we went through the zoning change, we did a traffic study for that. Again, 30 to 35,000 square feet, 30 to 40 apartment complex. That one, I think, was over 1,800 vehicle trips per day. I think it was 150 in the largest, which is the PM peak. We submitted a traffic memorandum with this application, which talks about total daily trips from this is 343. PM peak being the largest volume of trips at 82, I believe it is. So from the viewpoint of traffic impacting onto West Union, these type of uses as well as the storage are probably the least traffic generating use that you could make of the site. Bearing in mind, there were some comments at the staff meeting and the nature of the volume of traffic on West Union Street. These uses are helpful in that regard. The studies we have done, even going back to that large-scale development and traffic studies, indicate that even that volume of traffic would not meet warrants. Comments, again, were made at the staff meeting, so we're having a letter done by our traffic consultant that will indicate that the traffic generated from this project, both phase 1 and phase 2, will nowhere come close to signal warrants for signalization of any driveway or anything out there, and we should have that to you within the next week to 10 days. So volume of traffic and everything else is minimal in relation to what's going on the site, and as you can see, there's a significant area for queuing for people to wait until they find the gap in the traffic to get out. That's generally the overview of the project, and we'll let Darren talk about the specifics and the nature of the engineering details. Well, unless you have any questions of me.
Let's go ahead for now.
As Peter had mentioned, the driveway to this site was constructed during phase 1 of this project. Along with it, the utilities were brought in through that driveway. The plan in front of you is the utility plan. Sheet 5 is set. In blue, it shows where the water is proposed. There's a stub left from the phase 1 water main that was put in. There's a hydrant that needs to be relocated from phase 1 because of the change of what we showed as a preliminary plan as part of phase 1 that changed into what you see here in phase 2. The fire department has looked at that change and they think it will be acceptable. They've asked us to look at access to the site for the fire truck, and in particular there's 4 spaces to the south of building 1 that they've asked us to see if we can relocate. They're concerned that cars from those spaces could back up, and if they get stuck or get in an accident, they block access to the site. I've looked at that in a preliminary sense right now, and I believe I have a solution for that, and we'll present that to you when we make all these revisions. In green on this sheet is the drainage. The drainage system consists of a series of catch basins and manholes and 3 storm scepters. So each of these areas go from catch basin into the storm scepter and then into the galleys, concrete galleys. The galleys are shown as rectangles on the sheet, and I believe there's 3 systems. There's one up north too. All water will be infiltrated on site. There'll be no discharge to the wetlands. Also on here is gas. It runs parallel with the water, and the sewer has been brought off of West Union to the north of Building 1. There'll be oil grease separation for the floor drains in buildings 2 and 3. And I believe that is it.
One other change that your consultant asked us to look at was that there's an area here that's presently paved. There's no parking on, so we're changing the plan to reflect that as it's more of a grassed and landscaped area.
That rectangle there, or that triangle there, and right there.
This one.
Yep. Yep, got it. Yep, thank you.
We met with Design Review last night, and they've asked us to modify the landscaping. They'd like to see a more dense landscaping plan on this site, and we've agreed to go revisit that. And again, we'll be presenting something different with our revised plans.
So we're talking about dressing up this area as well as a continuation along the boundary.
The landscape plan also shows the lighting and the fire access. The fire access mainly is the turnaround between buildings 2 and 3. That will remain the same even though we're modifying the spaces to the south of building 1. Like I said, we've looked at that preliminary, and we don't believe that's going to be an issue. Also shown on this sheet is the lighting. There's lighting that lights parking lots, but will not affect, will not shed light onto the neighboring properties.
And just the other thing in the nature of the parking requirement, I think the parking requirement is 81 spaces and we're providing 82.
Just a quick question on the traffic. Does all this include conjunction with the school? Because you know what happens when the school goes in and out. They stop traffic. That's all taken into consideration?
During school hours, there is a crossing guard, so as that stopped, we'll have gaps in for our people to get out. Although again, AM is not, PM is the more generating of this use.
And what hours what's PM in those hours? Is that before school lets out, or is that during?
I don't
3 to
have the
5
traffic
or-
report in front of me. Usually you're talking typically from 7:30 to 9 is the AM peak.
I just know
The
that
PM.
when they stop the traffic for the buses and everything, it backs up all the way
Right.
and the other way into town. So if you have people coming in and out, it's,
Right. And that's
if
why from
that's-
the viewpoint of uses of a site that would generate less traffic, this is it.
Should we go on to John?
Yep.
During the design meeting last night, they were asking what the materials would be for the project and gave some suggestions. So we're going to be providing some samples when we go back before the design board on that. This is building 1. This is the southwest with the main entrance. What we're trying to accomplish is we have the building next door, you have homes in front of it and around it. So we're trying to mix the two, and we're trying to give it a more modern look, and with an asphalt roof, we're trying to take away that like a true commercial, like warehouse type building. We're going to be adding some awnings to the entryways, and we're gonna be adding some down lighting where it protrudes off, hidden, and so that it's illuminating down, so there's no lights like illuminating, coming and spreading a lot of light out across the area. The elevators are on the left side in the back. Then you have another entrance with another staircase. So we have elevators going in the basement all the way to the third floor storage. And then you also have the second means of egress of the staircase on the main entry with a vestibule where you can go in and then you can decide where you want to go. The third floor is going to be storage, mechanicals, that type of thing for the other floors.
Is that, real quick, but you said possibly if you don't do the second building, so you're designing this to be able to convert it into more offices?
We're building the third floor now and anticipated it may become, you know, commercial space in the future. Because to try to go back and then build it then just
Yeah,
wouldn't
exactly,
be
but-
feasible.
So you kinda have to count that as, you know, that could be more traffic, there could be more,
Yeah, all, I guess if you'd call it nuisance utility aspects of the building will be enclosed or encased. They won't be flat and screened and visible in any way on any of the buildings.
But the third floor, the possible use of the third floor is already part of the traffic study?
That's, at this stage of the game, just gonna be dry storage for.
But in the case in the future, it gets converted into usable spaces, that can,
In all likelihood, it would become office, cause you typically don't have retail above the first floor.
but is that extra traffic and parking already considered in the traffic
We'd have
study?
to come back to amend the site plan and go through that process and address all those questions,
Okay.
cause it would be a change in the use.
And then, since it sounds like, what about the basement? Is the basement mechanical, or what's the plan for the basement?
Some mechanical, the elevator shaft is down there, and again, it's just dry storage as well, which will always be dry storage. We don't anticipate people going down there, but, you know, for storage use.
There's no commercial future plan for it, it's just
No.
storage or mechanical,
No.
whereas the third floor will
Right.
become something
Yeah,
like
it won't,
that.
you don't have
Okay.
the ventilation in it, you don't have all the requirements.
So,
Okay.
and when you say storage, since you've got a commercial storage facility, it's not commercial storage, it's storage for your,
You know,
For use by the
other
tenants.
On the site.
Okay.
That wouldn't have employees associated with that section.
So you have various engineers obviously engaged in the project. Is there an architect involved?
I'm sorry?
Is there an architect on the project?
Jonathan is not licensed, but architectural design capacity.
The design committee wanted us to give more specifics on the windows as well, and maybe do a little bit more details there. We're considering shortening the first floor windows, and since the other building has some stone on it, is to put an apron of stone along the bottom of that. Maybe divide the windows up a little bit, maybe even decrease the number of windows. But we're trying to create some symmetry along with design, mixing horizontal and verticals, mix different textures and different materials. We're not really getting into the interior of the building now, so. No.
So I definitely appreciate you going to the design review committee and getting their input. And I definitely would be curious to see, as you guys have your follow-ups with them, I'd be curious to see, just see the materials that you think they're settling in on, just to get a sense of that.
This is that front view, so you can see we got it out there, the architectural, this is the back elevator piece.
And we would be putting awnings, you know, over these doors, and then over the elevator doors as well. We have a handicap walkways that go all around, so.
so pretty much this is where the windows are gonna be. It's not, is this something that could change if it looked like the space needed to be changed? Like,
No, that would be
that's,
the footprint.
that would look it, and then
would be-
you
that
just
would be-
divide the inside around the windows and
Yeah,
stuff,
the
okay?
exact uses within it, again, we're basically guessing 50% first floor retail, second floor office. So that, may change a little bit, but we still have to meet your parking requirements. But that footprint in that building wouldn't change.
So all the commercial on the bottom, it's only accessible through the main entrance in, or is there gonna be access through each individual?
There's a main entry in the front and then a main entry through that elevator.
And that's it, but there's not gonna be like doors going in at the end corner over there if somebody who had.
Not on the back.
a
If the
business.
tenant comes in and wants access, like, 'cause for a portion, you can see from the site plan, one of the main areas of parking is here.
Yeah.
So we've got sidewalks coming in here, so if tenant here wanted the space, and then we may put a door there, maybe a door entry location here, or there, people coming in from the street. So there may be a few more openings into the individual spaces, to accommodate the tenant needs.
Are any of those windows operable? They look like, none of those windows are operable, is that right? The current size, they can't be.
Some will be,
right?
it's like storefront, but, some of them could be like an awning type.
If they're
That was
broken
one of
down,
the
smaller.
The design committee was like maybe some dividers where maybe some of them are, either up high or down low. You can open them for ventilation, but typically in commercial buildings,
It's all sealed
it's
off.
conditioned, so you're not.
Yeah,
you're
not anymore,
It's a very
actually.
important-
That, not anymore. That's not really the way things are done anymore.
Yeah.
I guess just,
The buildings,
In buildings 2 and 3, they're basically both the same building. One has 2 more bays in it, it's just longer. This is building 2. This would be the part that's facing the street, and these windows represent where the mezzanine are, the office area. And then this would be facing the wetlands. You have entry doors on the sides, these are the overhead doors.
So the concept with these contractor bays would be somebody who's renting these would have the ability to get their truck, their vehicle inside the structure.
Yeah.
And would generally be stored inside.
And that was the other point that came up from the design review board. As I said, the only area in the nature of any outside stuff is there.
Right.
So, just a bit of information, so when we created this up as phases, we condominium the whole site. So the storage facility is one unit, and the smaller unit is another unit. Each of the buildings is responsible for the maintenance of its own building. Then all the unit owners would participate in the maintenance of all the common improvements, which is the lighting on the site, the drainage, the parking, and everything else. Each site would have a designated, at least one parking space for each unit. In front of these storage bays, each one would have its parking space and the access to its doors. There wouldn't be any other outside storage, anything left within that, because the rest of it has to be kept open in the nature of the fire access in and out. So that'll be all part of the restrictions in the condominium documents, that there won't be any outside activity, again, with the exception of west
Bays on
of
the
that
far
last
side.
building.
Parking trailers and tractors up there.
why are those buildings so tall?
What's that?
Why are those buildings so tall? What's happening in that
Because
extra
they have
10?
interior mezzanine space.
Yeah, usually the windows at a mezzanine space are gonna be at a height that's set as maybe at 6'8", so that someone can look out the windows. So what's happening above at that 10 to 12, I'm not sure, feet of red siding that's above that? What's in that space?
So that's intended to have vertical storage, so again, keep everybody inside the building. So, any type of person that wanted to do, not manufacturing, but if a plumber or an electrician was in there and wanted to store stuff on metal shelving, they would have plenty of room to do so.
So is that mezzanine, is that intended to go across the whole floor
No,
plate?
it's only 20 by 25.
Okay, so
Each
then,
unit.
so then the storage is going up potential 40 to 45 feet of storage?
And then also for trucks to be able to be in there, and if
Well, the trucks have to be able to get through the door, right?
What's that?
The trucks, I assume once they get through the door, then, which
Right,
is,
but if they have a dump and they lift it up and they're
Trucks
working on
go
it, as part of that, you need that height as well.
And just so we're clear here, when you introduced this, you said single story, and then you say mezzanine, which my understanding is that's actually a second story, but only on one side. Is that the,
Within one space. I mean,
Yeah.
from the viewpoint of commercial height, there is no story limit, with the exception of 5 stories, so.
In the code, the mezzanine
yeah,
being
we need to
considered-
keep you on the microphone so
Oh,
that people
sorry.
at home can hear you. I'm sorry.
For the, by code and by rule, we're following the rules to call it a mezzanine and not another story. It can't be more than a certain square footage of the area, and so that's why it's only so big. It's more office, and it has a bathroom up there, and then you have that extra height so that you can have mechanicals above it. You can have a higher ceiling. You can go as high as you need for storage, to be able to accommodate. We're trying not to restrict. You want to invite as many different types as you can. So you want to have as much storage.
I don't know about the building code because we don't deal with that, but as
Yeah.
far as zoning, whether it's a mezzanine or a second story, I don't think that makes a difference in this situation. But it's a terminology that we haven't heard before. So I want to make sure that we're understanding it correctly and that any residents who are watching tonight understand it correctly.
Right,
The allowed height for commercial in that district is 5 stories, so even if you count it as a story, we're well under the limit.
Exactly.
So basically, if I'm thinking about this, if you're walking into the building, you go through the garage door, right in front of you is the area where vehicles or trucks would be, and then if you keep walking towards the back of the building, there'll be a stair, which will go up to a mezzanine, which would have storage,
Right.
office space, stuff like that, right?
correct.
Okay.
Right, and there's a bathroom on the lower level and the upper level. Yep.
Okay. I did want to follow up question on some of the stuff you were saying earlier. So is the concept that these buildings are owned and then the units are rented out, or is this like you use the term condominium? So what's the intended, set up here?
Is part of requirements for a condominium, you can't add a building to a condominium until the building is complete and you have the floor plans and the architectural plans within that. So at that stage of the game, we would know the specific use going into that. The way we have done it in the nature of the existing condominium, we have simply references that uses allowed in these buildings or uses allowed under your zoning bylaw. So that the only thing we can put in there are uses that are allowed, and these uses are allowed.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the uses, I'm just, condominium in my mind is a residential term.
Yeah.
Right, so, and people can own a condominium, so they can own connected dwellings, right? So, there's no intention for any residential, you're using the term condominium, but only in the sense that these spaces are connected.
Using condominium term in the nature of, that's what the law is, but again, yeah, not using it as in the nature of residential condominium, no. It's a commercial condominium, and in fact, we're gonna get to the stage when we add this, where we can't have residential, because there are secondary market requirements, where if you have a mixed condominium, so much of it has to be residential, and we will exceed that commercial component, so that we won't be able to do that.
there any thought, I don't know, efficiency, or just putting some windows to let light in and make it look like it's not a giant monopoly building?
I mean,
Just a thought, I'm just.
yeah, and we're gonna.
Most of it's gonna be around the back of the
The-
parking lot and everything,
Right.
but just,
Yeah, none of these buildings will have per se lighting in the back next to the residential, and we can use the same downlighting that we talked about for the building one is part of the fronts of these. We do have as part of the site plan, the full photometric, which your consultant reviewed. We've got to change a couple locations because they exceed going off-site, but we're in the process of doing that. So we'll satisfy with the requirement from the viewpoint of foot candles not exceeding the property bounds.
We did put the mezzanines where they're facing the area where it's more visible, so you do see the windows, but
and
as
is
far
that
as like,
be an issue with light on the inside, lighting it up, coming out through the windows to, you know what I mean? Will that be, no? Hmm?
I mean,
It'd be like somebody leaving a light on in their house.
Yeah, okay.
right, right.
Supposedly,
I agree, you know, putting the windows on the back facing the homes that are there, at least for building two,
breaks it up.
you know, it does break it up, and I do think that's good.
Right.
I do like the comment about, you know, considering windows on the front of it. It's a huge patch
Natural
of just
light.
building on the front there above the bays.
Mhm.
You know, I know everything adds cost, but it might, you know, break up the building a little bit.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, but then looking at who's gonna see it,
Nobody.
since it, you know, it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
facing,
you're well into the site.
you know, it's
Yeah, yeah.
facing wetlands and
Right.
only people who drive in there who are gonna work there.
Right.
I'm not gonna push hard on that. I mean, it would,
It's
Well,
I agree it would make
more
it look better,
natural light.
but,
Yeah, the focus from the design group was on the building one, because
Yeah.
that's the street facade frontage of the building you're gonna see.
Well, they
Yeah.
also
Mm.
commented on height.
yeah.
They were concerned about height.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would also agree with the other comments that these buildings feel really tall for the type of building that they are. You know, we've had other contractor bay type buildings and none of them have been nearly this tall. So shortening these buildings, if you can do that within your market, I would certainly look at doing that.
One of the things I failed to mention about building one would be a wood constructed building, where buildings 2 and 3 are, metal.
Like the storage, existing
Right,
storage building.
right.
Yeah.
Metal roofs, metal, you know, the colors aren't, you know, we're trying to, what is gonna match with the building that's there, what's going to match with the neighbors, and so, we're still in discussions of what that better combination is, I believe. So, we're not wanting it to be overwhelming. And also with the surroundings, and so, you know, do we go with blues or do we go with reds or, so, cause we,
You know, I appreciate the effort to obviously follow the many, many regulations and things that there are to do a construction like this, including all the site work, including all the new drainage requirements, including safety precautions, including where to put the snow. I mean, obviously there's a ton here. And the shape of the site makes it that effort excessively difficult, you know. It's not an easy thing to do. And the surroundings between wetlands and residential houses, which I know are in a zone that may someday not be residential anymore, just by the nature of where they are, right, and what's popping up around them. So I appreciate the effort in that. But it seems that, full disclosure, I'm an architect myself, and but it seems that in looking at those regulations and putting these buildings on site, that there could be the buildings are a little unkind, I think, to the site around them, to the houses that are front. So yeah, the windows in the back elevation facing those houses make them a little bit more human scale, but now there are people that are looking into basically the backyards of these residences. And granted, there's only 3 or 4 houses along here. But that backyard is supposed to be a private space, and the distance between these buildings and that property line looks like it's 10.5 feet. So I assume that the setback line is 10 feet, and that 0.5 feet, which is 6 inches, is generally given as the oops. The foundation didn't get poured quite right, and I still make my 10 feet. Going through site reviews right now myself on my projects. So I'm looking for is like so in looking to be both to use the site effectively, cost effectively, to make it profitable, I totally get that. But how also does it become a good neighbor to these people, to the town, to the school, which I just came from that middle school a couple hours ago from an event, not the whole school emptying out at the end of the day, and you could hardly get out of there. You could hardly get out. We sat in line to get out of that parking lot. So it's, that was about, say, 5 o'clock, right? So, so there's a number of issues here, and I know I'm biased in this way, and yeah, I just know I am. But I see all the engineers on the project that are looking to make this thing work, and I bet it works, right, with all the inside drainage and all the other considerations. But I'm looking for a different sensibility. I wonder if it would be worth your while to bring an architect on the project that also looks at mediating that difference. When you talk about mediating the difference between this large storage building that's already there and the houses which are sitting next door, that is a huge design challenge. It's a fun one, for an architect to do, but it's not simple. It's not a matter of just mixing up the shape of windows. In fact, it's just much more complicated than that in order to make buildings that really are friendly to the town, that become a good neighbor, which I think, maybe is out of place for this board. I'm a rookie, so I can get away with stuff like that, and I don't know what's out of place and what's not out of
Good.
place. Preston can tell me if I'm out of line. But how do we make buildings, how do we add to our town, whatever those buildings are, that become good neighbors, right? And so even when we talk about operable windows versus inoperable windows, operable windows are actually the way things are going in terms of sustainability and to create a good, healthy working environment. It's moving away from things that are inoperable, unless you're in a skyscraper, of course. But that's the way that things are going. So Ashland is a town that's really trying to look forward and has been, how do we be a part of that with projects like this? I just think it's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity obviously for the landowners. They're trying to make it into a commercial opportunity. I get that, it's private property. But how is it also something that can be that people can be proud of, I guess, as they, how does it become something more than that? And that's what I'm just throwing that out there.
And I believe, you put screening up already between there, you have trees and.
Yeah, this plan doesn't depict the existing, at least highlighted the existing, landscape.
I don't know how much that'll help, depending on the size of the building, how close it is to the property and how long it takes for the trees to grow and all that, but I think I remember you put screening all the way around the perimeter,
Yeah,
right, on the side. Is that gonna be,
There's
are those trees
and
that'll
fencing
grow
that
up?
goes basically all the way through there. We got new screening there.
And how
Well,
high
those
did,
will grow.
yeah.
They're, I don't know, probably 10 feet now. Is that a reasonable amount?
At least, yeah.
So,
I
Tricia,
mean, not, that's just
Yeah, that's the length
one
of the
little
table.
thing.
And that's the table 10 feet long? From the edge of the property line to a 40-foot wall.
The other point in the nature of these buildings, they're at elevation 252, which is a little bit lower than the adjacent sites, probably most of them by 4 to 6 feet or so. So it's a little bit down as well.
But I think when you did the screening, the object was that there was gonna be buildings back there and you wanted to screen them.
Yeah, I
Screen
mean-
that parking lot off, so whether,
Yeah,
how much that helps or
the
not.
front building has always been at that location. The other ones were modified as a result of the requirements of trying to satisfy the fire truck turnaround, to get them in and out of the site. And again, theoretically, we could have gone up 5 stories, put parking under, and made
Oh, I
these
get
buildings
it.
a lot higher.
Yeah.
We knew we, because of where we are, we didn't wanna do that, because of the traffic on the roadway. But then again, the use that we're proposing is a lot more beneficial in the nature of the impacts of the school in as well. So, you know, there are some things that we took into consideration to try to get to the points you raised.
Have you gotten through all of the presentation at this time?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
Other questions?
I have some just general questions. If I remember we did something to allow you to clear part of this for using for storage on phase 1. Could you show on this map what part has already been cleared and what part hasn't?
Well, basically, I think pretty much extending that line back is the area that's already cleared.
Okay, so building 1 and building 2 are already cleared,
Yeah, through
but
that
building
design.
3 is not. Okay,
Right.
just for people familiar with the area, it helps give some perspective.
And there was already, I mean, the rest of it, there was, with the trees there, but it wasn't a full forest you could walk.
I know often the fire department likes to get access to all sides of buildings, and it looks like at least buildings 2 and 3, they can't get behind them.
They can't be behind them, but the fire department was at the staff meeting. Again, the only concern that they raised were those 4 parking spaces, which they've added. We've changed the plan to show them that we're using the truck they want to get through the site, so
Okay.
they have not required access on 4 sides.
With these being metal buildings, I could see them being less concerned about that. On the other hand, with having trucks inside, that
These will be
increases
fully
concerns.
sprinkled buildings.
Okay. Looking at that same overall site plan, I see just a huge amount of asphalt. In particular, along the wetlands, I don't even see, I see a kind of zigzaggy line based on you're paving absolutely as much as you can, as opposed to a straight line that would indicate
Right.
that's what's really needed. You know, it looks,
Yeah, again, a couple things. This is becoming grassed. This area here, I think we're gonna straighten out a little bit. We're gonna, again, if we've gotta move some of these parking spaces, they've gotta go in there. But to be honest with you, the large need in the massive pavement in the middle is for that.
the
Which is
turnaround.
the fire department
Yeah.
truck turnaround.
But I think as this goes forward, you should be tightening up those lines, and having less, pavement.
Yep.
Cause it just feels like an awful lot.
We're looking at some, as I said, those additional parking spaces and creating some berming at the end of it and a little bit of landscaping for protection as well.
Okay. Another thing, you mentioned that, you've got those 4 underground,
3.
or 3, underground, detention basins where the
Recharge
water's gonna flow into and then soak into the ground in there. Theoretically, if we get, say we get a tropical storm in that dumps several feet of water on us in one day, those fill up.
They're designed for that. You want
Where is the outflow of last resort? I mean, it's designed so you're supposed to be catching and retaining, but at some point, the system reaches capacity, it's still raining, water's flowing off site, where does it flow? And you need a microphone, please.
So the stormwater system's designed in accordance with the rules as far as DEP's stormwater management standards. The 100-year storm is the largest storm that we're asked to mitigate.
But I'm not saying how are you gonna mitigate this, I'm just saying, ultimately we can have something that overwhelms the system, and this is true for any development, and we just wanna know, when it fails in that kind of situation, how does it fail? Where does the water go? Is it going into the wetlands? Is it going to the neighbors? Is it going into the street? You know,
Beyond the 100-year storm.
yeah, you know, we've got global warming. We might get a 500-year storm every few years coming up. You know, who knows? We just want to know. I'm not saying you have to design for it, but we want to know.
The lower portion of the site is the wetlands, so it would ultimately go there in the storm above the 500.
So yeah, it would back up into the catch basins. Catch basins are the low point. The site does have a high point to the south of building 1. It's a high point coming into the site, and then it starts to go down towards building 2 and 3. So we'd fill up that parking lot.
Okay, so the parking lot and then into the wetlands would be the failure of last resort or whatever.
Correct.
And if it's already a 100-year storm
Yeah.
and the wetlands are, how full are they?
Yeah, but
So,
you know,
Well,
it's
The
I just
parking lot itself with the berm over, because everything is bermed in, would act as additional storage before it got to the wetland.
They just flood the parking lot pretty much.
Right.
okay. Yeah, you know, or if you know something happens and you know the storage the storm drains all get clogged, you know, because somebody's not maintaining them. We've had
Well,
that.
there's
We've had that at other sites.
Yeah, oh, I agree with you. And that's why, from the viewpoint of the condominium association, they will be responsible for the maintenance of all that. There's an O&M plan that's part of the package to you and the Conservation
Yep.
Commission approval. So that, they're guaranteed for that to be maintained
Yeah.
on an annual basis.
Yeah, we just want to know, you know, what, you know, because things happen and, you know, systems fail and you want to know, okay, so you designed it correctly, but if it fails, what then happens?
Catastrophic
Yeah.
event, what happens,
Yes.
right?
You know, this is pre-disaster mitigation, you
At
know,
that point,
planning,
all
whatever.
downtown's under 6 feet of water, so.
But, you know, so,
Has to go somewhere.
but yeah, if we can lose some of that pavement there, that would be good. I noticed the roofs of these buildings look empty and flat, at least in your renderings. They look ideal for solar. I don't think that is something we are likely to require, but it is something that we would probably encourage. I know in some site plan reviews, we put in a statement in our decision that you know, while solar is not shown on these plans, adding it would not be considered a violation of the site plan. So we've done things like that in the past to encourage solar, and I would encourage you to consider that.
We are, so that'd be good if it was on our decision as well.
Also, the various storage bins at the far part of the site, yeah, what are those storing like potentially bark mulch and things like that?
Yes.
Yeah, so also, that would be a question for me as well. I mean, you may not be aware that, you know, 10 years ago or something along 135, there was such a landscape storage company that needed to, I don't know if they were, I don't remember what they were trying to do, trying to expand or whatever, but the smell that was recorded by the neighborhood and how the, you know, because it smells as it ferments, right? And how far away you could smell the bark mulch and things like this. And given that there's a school right there, you know, I just don't know if that's, yes, I'm sure it's within the regulation, but is it the, again, is it the best use? Is it the right location for that? It'd be interesting I want to say it was about 10 years ago that there were the studies done and recording how far the smell went in the
Yeah.
town.
That was a manufacturer though.
No, these were piles of bark mulch. I don't know if what they were,
Talking about,
D&D.
D&D mulch.
yeah, that was a manufacturer. They manufacture it, grind it, and color it in massive quantities. I mean, these things can't hold that much.
Okay.
This is just a small thing.
And this
No,
is,
they were having like
back
20-foot
into the
piles
site
there
is-
too. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
much
I
bigger
just,
than this, but still,
Manufacturing going on in mulch.
okay.
That's
it is a valid concern.
So the concept here would be, if you pull into the site at 11 o'clock at night, there should be no vehicles parked, you know, anywhere outside and
only in parking spaces.
only in registered parking spaces, okay?
Or, again, that back unit will have that back area.
Yep. And so the intended concept of these are commercial condominiums, right? So what we're saying is there's an owner of each bay, right? The building is collectively owned by the people who own each bay, right?
Yeah, the people, the unit, let's assume there are in fact 4 unit owners there.
Yep.
They will be responsible for maintenance of the building. Those unit owners will be responsible
Right,
for
so
that.
there's a kind
All
of,
these unit owners are responsible for the paved area and the landscaping, the drainage and all the common
so
elements.
there's a condominium association for that
And
building
they'll
and
have
for
a
the other
budget,
building.
and they'll say
Yeah.
you gotta pay X dollars a month based upon that budget, which includes the O&M plan for the maintenance of the drainage system.
So the rules of that condominium, the collective bylaws of the condominium, right, will stipulate that there's no parking
Right.
outside of that, okay? And
Parking will be only in the spaces shown on
and they
the plan.
enforce themselves as an association. Okay, so I just wanted to kick that through. In terms of hours of operation, so I mean, you can start work outside 7 a.m. right in Ashland, and when's the cutoff? Is it 7 p.m.?
7 to 7.
7 to 7. Okay.
No Sundays?
Construction work is 7 to 7, no Sundays, and no federal holidays.
Yeah, so there's no construction work, but you got trucks backing up. You got
Yeah, you have trucks backing up. It's a commercial facility. You know, I don't think that 7 to 7 rule would really kind of fall into this because you do have, you know, these are your plumber, electrician, you know, X, Y, or Z that are gonna be, you know, at some point, or if this is, you know, moves forward, will be owning that unit. So, you know, they could drive their personal car here, park and jump into their, you know, their commercial vehicle,
Yep.
and then take off for the day. You know, if there was Saturday work, yeah, you know, the
Yep.
people could come and go as they please, I believe.
Middle of winter when pipes have been freezing, it could be at 3 a.m. because,
Yeah.
you know, they gotta fix somebody's pipes.
Yeah, we
So-
would not anticipate any hours from the nature of the inside activities.
Mhm.
It's the outside activities, and I can get you language from the viewpoint of other projects like this that we've done, where if one of those plows snow, they can go and put on the plows, and you take those exceptions out for that type of operation.
Yeah, but yes.
So I'm just envisioning it's summer, it's hot. The bays are not air conditioned, or are they air conditioned?
There will be, and they will be within the roof structure, so they'll be
Okay.
enclosed and screened.
So the part where the vehicles actually sit are air conditioned.
No, not necessarily.
Depends on the owner and how they want to do it. Okay. So
And the same thing with the solar.
all I'm getting at is you know, it's the summer. Somebody's working on a truck, working on something. It's hot. They got the bay open. It's 9 o'clock. They're whatever, cutting pipe, welding, sawing. You know, anything, any range of things could go on in here.
Well, that will be a
Yeah.
concern for us and the other units as well, so
Yeah.
that'll all be,
That's why the doors are facing.
right.
Yeah.
So,
That's true. It should reflect most of that.
Do they have
away.
any-
Again, those doors are facing,
Yep, the swamp. No, I
Is
get it.
there any, rules about, you know, running a truck inside there if they're working on it? They have to exhaust that out or anything?
there's
like
certain
the-
building code requirements from that perspective.
Where does
And
that
we
blow
have-
out?
And we have, every condominium has, as part of its standard requirements, compliance within the unit with all laws and rules and regulations. So if there's a building code prohibition for activities, they can't do it, which would be idling with inside for whatever period of time.
Okay. But there's not gonna be any kind of, like at the fire department, they have exhaust hook thing hooks up and they blow it out somewhere.
If there was an
No.
exhaust, it would have to meet the
Yeah,
requirements
okay.
for it in the exhaust system. Right now, we don't know who the tenants are.
Cause if they, you know, blow it out the back into their yard or something, that might be
Right.
annoying.
Any other comments from the board at this time? Comments from the public? Please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record first, and then we'd love to hear your comments.
Hi, I'm Emery Bond, 59 West Union Street. I'm a direct abutter. So a couple questions. So I'm mainly concerned with building 3 because that directly affects the lot line that I share with the applicant. It shows a boulder wall, a boulder wall and a cut basically right at the property line. At the design review meeting, I asked for a detail on how the fence, the arborvitaes or some sort of shrubs in the walkway are all going to fit within a 10-foot, 0.7-inch spot, just because there's a cut and there's really not a lot of room. You know, I'm more concerned about getting my fencing and my screening in there, cause it's a 40-foot tall building here. One of the other things that we discussed at the design review meeting was doing a balloon test for the height of the buildings. I would implore you to absolutely do that. I don't mind the business use, I just think 44 feet is insane. It's just way too high. The board seems to be more concerned about building one because it's visible from the street. I'll see this in my backyard. Mr. Marcus will see that in his backyard. The Ferrises, they're gonna see this all around them. They have nowhere to go. So if there's any wiggle room to do a smaller, shorter structure, I would implore them to do that. In regards to the solar, if we're getting a 40-foot tall building, I don't wanna see solar on it. That's insult to injury. Solar, it's ugly. You know, you're gonna put these giant buildings and they're gonna shadow us anyways, and you put solar on it. I think that's the wrong move. I have a bunch of things, so if anybody else wants to talk, I can, you know, defer my time and come back, but I have a couple other items that I'd like to go through. In regards to the building 2, building 3, the mezzanine, they said they were 25 by 25-ish square feet with an office and a bathroom. What's the handicap accessibility there? There's no ramps out of the back, there's no, I didn't see any access. In the design review meeting last night, they talked about building 1 with an elevator. Does building 2 and 3 have an elevator to get to the mezzanine?
No, as was stated, there's basements on the basement, on the floor level as well as the mezzanine, so.
Bathrooms,
there's no
yeah.
need- Yeah, that's not enough.
So if you were in a wheelchair and you needed to go to the office, how would you get there?
There's a door in the front,
To building 2, the mezzanine, where the offices are?
there's a bathroom on the first floor.
Well, the gentleman here said that there was, you know, there'd be a bathroom on the mezzanine level.
He said there's a bathroom on the first floor and the second floor. That's what he said.
But I didn't see,
You're asking if someone's needs to go to the office, not the
yeah, how do you get to the office?
There's certain use requirements where accessibility isn't required by ADA. I can't name exactly what those are, but that is the case for certain uses like this.
Right.
For building 1, I think it would be required,
I didn't see
but not
any-
for 2 and 3.
Yeah, I didn't see any ramps out of the back either. There's a set of stairs. I don't see any ramps as well. I'm not an architect, so I couldn't tell you. Just what I noticed from looking at the drawings. There's ledge noted on the plan. Is that gonna be hammered or they require any blasting?
That's a good question. Does the applicant know?
It all depends on if it is ledge. So far, we haven't hit any ledge on the site, a lot of big boulders on the side of the table. And that was one of the questions, that the conservation asked, that we check some of the soils, so we're doing some more soil testing. If it is ledge, it depends on how big it is, but we would certainly, reserve the right to, blast if we had to. I don't envision that. I did the whole job over there, no blasting, not once, for that entire building we did. So I don't anticipate it.
Sorry, we can't hear.
Microphone. We have to use the microphone, guys. I'm sorry. Just for the folks at home.
Sure. We've started to revise the plan per the comments from the peer review, and we've adjusted the drainage to be outside that ledge area for the concept that's coming forward to you shortly.
As far as the traffic study, what was the date on that study? Was it before or after the occupancy of the Cirrus Apartments?
I'll take a further look into that.
Because I already have a request with the previous town planner about turning that intersection at Sears Drive and West Union Street into a no turn on red. It takes upwards of 15, 20 minutes at peak rush hour to get out of the driveway. And I was told that after the 200th occupancy there, that they would review the need for the traffic signaling there. So that's something I'll follow up with the town planner.
Please do. I've been the town planner in Ashland here for coming up on 4 months, and I have not seen that. However, I think it'd be great if you could bring that to my office. I'm more than happy to take a look at that.
Because I'm also concerned about the queuing and stoppage on West Union Street, especially during the school hours and everything else. It does get dangerous.
Yeah, I do recall that one of the conditions was that they would do a traffic study after a certain level of occupancy and then adjust the traffic lights as needed. So I remember what you're talking about.
And then, can we talk about the schedule? Are we gonna be into another 2-year cycle of construction here? Or what's the timeline for construction? What's the project duration?
Does the applicant have an answer to that?
Building one first, probably what, 8 months?
It'll probably be building 3. It's gonna, some of it's gonna depend on occupancy.
Right.
Really. I mean, getting this approved and then finding folks that are interested in, coming to the site will more than likely drive the schedule.
So, phase 1, we've been almost 18 months of construction, and it's still not done.
That has 0 to do with me. There's another person building the building. I just did.
Microphone, please, microphone.
Sorry.
Guys.
apologize. That has 0 to do with me. I did the site work. That building was, my schedule, my construction schedule from a site, standpoint. I was supposed to be paving there last November. So that has absolutely nothing to do with me. That's another person, that's Parkway Construction, and that's the owner.
And then, let's talk about security of the site. So, the site right now is open. The fences have been broken apart. It's right near the middle school. Children are curious, they could walk right in there. It's been open for months. Oftentimes, when the workers leave at the end of the day, they leave the gates wide open. They park on the sidewalk. There's trash all over the sidewalk. There's just very little respect for being a good neighbor in the neighborhood. Not to even mention the dust. The dust has been unimaginable, and the poor Ferrises have been inundated with dust for the last 18 months, when it blows constantly on them. And now we're talking about another 2 years. These poor people, there needs to be something that's done to prevent that from happening again. So what's the plan for dust mitigation for phase 2?
The applicant like to address that?
Yeah. As far as the security issue goes, I have an email that I'll forward to the town planner that I sent last night to the construction company, because I just happened to drive by there and I saw the gate open. And I saw a couple of the sections on the school side, the fence was separated, like somebody had been parking and walking through, which they're not supposed to be doing. We are not there right now because they're so far behind schedule, because they haven't gotten the telephone pole moved, that we can't even finish the site work right now, waiting for the telephone pole. I sent an email that I'll forward to the planner, telling them they're responsible for the security. The gate is open, it's not safe, the kids are coming back to school, and that they needed to clean up the front of the site. So I'll forward that to you. As far as dust mitigation goes, that was also raised by Mr. Bond at Conservation, and we used fire hoses during the construction and when we were crushing. And what we intend to do this time is use something more powerful, a water cannon that is used in commercial irrigation of ball fields and stuff. And it's a pretty high-powered, expensive thing, but it will cast a water band about 250 feet up to 30 feet tall, so we can hit piles and we can better control the dust when we're actually working.
So it sounds like dust control is only in place when the applicant is working on the site in his capacity as contractor. If you would go to the site today, there's no dust control at all. There's no hoses, no water truck, no covered piles, there's nothing.
We will look into that because, and regardless of who is working there, from the town's perspective, we don't distinguish between, a subcontractor, the applicant, they're all the same as far as we're concerned.
And who enforces that?
Mostly that would be, I think, the building inspector, though the planning director also has some jurisdiction there as well, I believe.
So tonight's the first night I'm hearing about the fence, and I will be out there. I'll send an email after this meeting to kind of take a look at that. And then the fence and the dust, I do visit the site quite, I would say on a weekly basis. And if you're saying dust is such a hazard on the site, then I will speak to the enforcement authority, which would be the building commissioner, and then I will also reach out to the actual contractor at this time.
Yeah, in general, if there's a construction project in town and there are off-site problems such as dust or noise outside of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or on Sundays, you should talk to the planning office, and we can get someone to go out and look at that and do an enforcement action if necessary.
Yeah, and I'll give you my email after the meeting, so you can email me, and I'll try to take care of your concerns as soon as possible.
Great. Just another thing with the security, it would be nice if there was a contact person. Since the applicant's not there on site, the contractor's doing his own thing, he's behind, he's leaving the fences open, it should be a construction contact, phone number. I know Parkway has a sign on the front there, but it just says Parkway Construction. There's no site contact, there's no superintendent or supervisor. Again, these gates have been open for over 2 months.
Okay, I'm gonna try to take care of that first thing.
And then also at the Conservation Commission, we just talked about the added for during construction additional street sweepings as the trucks have been dragging mud and dirt out in the street. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Tom Ferris, my wife Sandy and I live at 73 West Union Street. I'm concerned with the height. I know it's 40 feet. I'm looking here. What's this, about a 20-foot high ceiling? That's pretty big. Now, the storage facility, I believe, is a 33-foot high building. I know they can have 5 feet, but that's a school zone. Also, it's, as I said it in a meeting last night, it's Ashland's main street. Now, we're spending a lot of time and money to try to clean up 126. I'd hate to see 135 go down that route. So I'm concerned with the height of the buildings. If they could lower them, that'd be nice. Also, the closeness to our boundary line. I realize it's there. Now, they did put up a nice cedar fence, and Bill did put in the arborvitae, and they're growing. But this year, this dust has been unbearable. There's been no attempt at dust abatement. We've not been able to use our deck. I sit out in the backyard and I have to come in. I've developed a cough that my doctor's put me on medication for. There's been no attempt at keeping it down. Last year they did try to keep the dust down. This year, nothing. It's just barren, I don't know what it is, nothing grows there. So I'd like to see the dust abatement and the buildings lower. That's all I have to say, and I'd like to thank you for your time and many of your questions. I think you asked questions already that my wife and I had in mind, so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Emery Bond, 59 West Union Street again. Another thing on sheet 2 of the site plan, they do show a large caliper tree that straddles the applicant's and my property's line. I've expressed concern about the fact that the root system could be impacted because it's a 4 to 5 foot diameter oak tree, especially with these cuts being so close to it. I don't have an attachment to the tree. I'm worried that it could fall over if we did these cuts. So I'd like to see the applicant at least take it down. I'd be amenable to losing the tree. I believe it's already dead because of other work that was done, test pits within the tree canopy, the drip line. And then I also wanted to talk about the screening. There's some discrepancy along the landscape plan that shows arborvitae's or some sort of shrubbery directly along the back of the building. I'm expecting a 6-foot stockade fence over my entire lot line with arborvitae's along my entire lot line. That's what I'm expecting, is at least an olive branch for screening for these 44-foot tall buildings. So I'd like the applicant to at least consider that.
Thank you.
That would sound consistent with what we asked previously for the screening for the other portions that where we've already addressed that. So I remember we had some extensive discussion on the screening for the part that we already allowed them to clear, and this we'd want essentially the same when they clear the space for building 3, most likely.
Okay.
Mark Tassoni, good evening. I've been watching this progress since groundbreaking up to where it is now. I would like to ask the board on the stormwater. Here in Metro West, when was the last time we had a typhoon? For the 500-year storm example.
Well, we had Hurricane Irene, which I think was actually a tropical storm by the time it got here.
Well, what year was that?
It was like 4 years ago or something, 4 or 5 years ago.
So it's not a every climate weather storm thing. Okay, and for the Ferrises with the dust and the containment and all that, yes, once it gets up in the air, it does travel through wind currents, and once it gets up there, it's kind of hard to control. And I'm hoping that Mr. Ferris, with his cough and his medications, hoping it gets through, because when you get up there, it's kind of health-wise an issue. The building, 42 feet high, is it? For height? Okay. Still under the Ashland bylaws in height difference. And I would take that from there, the ADA with the elevator, office, bathrooms, and all that stuff is compliant to a certain point. Once it's there, it's on site in the building, it's there to be used, and it's accessible. Let's see. Traffic, school combined, the Sears apartments combined. We had the same discussion with Franklin Street. So this is basically nothing new with what this is. I'm looking at it as it's worth keeping on going, but making sure that it goes, it keeps all the dotted I's and crossing all T's and everything, working the regulations and all that stuff. But it's still gotta be a fair and complex and compromise to each board, to the applicant, and to the well-dedicated downtown design workers and all that for this. We gotta make sure that it's a design that's attractive to get here. And to look not just on paper, but to the reasonable of what is there to go by. And to the female member, automatic windows, a burglary, great thing to have. If you don't have cameras and you don't have security. So I'm just saying, hear it all, we're all hearing it all right now. But it's gonna take at least a couple more meetings and site plan reviews and discussions to really understand what's going on. Appreciate what the people are saying, appreciate the developer, appreciate the board listening to it. Just be fair and compromise and meet down the road and be happy halfway together. Thank you.
Just one quick follow-up to Mr. Bond's comments about the fencing, and to make sure that there's perspective. Been more than willing to work with the Ferrises. We did have one original plan that had a vinyl fence that was supposed to go in with probably 20% of the trees that were here. And when we did come back to the board to ask for additional area for the processing and what would be materials coming off the storage site, it was decided at that time that we changed the vinyl to stockade and add another, I don't know, 10 or 12 trees, whatever. An additional expense of probably $24,000. I wasn't real happy. I said, okay, that's fine. The residence is right there. That's reasonable. And we even put a nice stone seat in the back of Mr. Ferris's yard at that time, and it's an ongoing offer. I said I would bring folks into Power Wash's house if they needed cleaning. In the house, I offered it, and that they were all set. And then continuing along and understanding that some of these residences, the Montecuelas and the Marcuses, are the houses are a little bit closer, particularly on the Montecuelas. I understand the issue about the fencing and the screening. Mr. Bond is referencing the back of the property here, which is really only a portion of the building, and I think it's important to understand for context. I mean, the back of his property that we're looking at is essentially a contractor's yard, where they have, you know, equipment and store all sorts of things in a residential area. And I think that's an important contextual point to consider.
I'm just gonna jump in here, and I think I myself, as the town planner, can take a site visit out and take a look at the property. I have visited the site once, but I think maybe it's important for the planning board to take a site visit and actually walk around the site. So, Mr. Bond, I'm gonna just kind of mention that before you speak, that if there was additional fences or buffers, you know, requested, that we just take a site visit and we actually walk around the parcels, because I think getting to know the lay of the land, the topographical lay of the land, is very important in a situation like this, especially with proposed commercial but residential. And so with that said, if it is appropriate and the board would like, you know, with the applicant is to set up a meeting on site, you know, during, you know, normal business hours, and with the ability to walk the site and around, and taking a look at, Mr. Bond, maybe your property where you may request a fence, or have asked, you know, for the addition of a fence, and along with 69 and 65 West Union Street, and how those are in relation to 73 West Union Street, the Ferrises, as Mr. Ferris stated. So, thank you.
I would just like to say, you can come over anytime you want. I'd be happy to show you the property and show you what we're looking at. So.
Well, at the time of a site meeting, I think it may be appropriate to invite the applicant, to invite the butters with you and Mr. Ferris, and the gentleman, I'm sorry, that hasn't spoken in the back yet, on the site visit, so we all can have a conversation, because that's what the public hearing is. It's a conversation between the planning board and applicant and the abutters.
They are more than welcome. They are my neighbors, so
Thank you.
not a problem.
Good evening, Mary O'Brien, a resident of Ashland. I just had some questions. I did not have a map before I came. I had just seen the notice in the paper. And so I was not familiar with any of this, except for the fact that I drive back and forth 135 probably 20 times a day. So I am familiar with the storage facility, or the one that has already been built. But as far as the other buildings, so if you don't mind, could I ask some questions about what I couldn't see before from sitting over there?
Sure.
Because you didn't point out, and I wasn't familiar with these buildings. So right now, excuse me, this is 135
Yeah.
right here?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the storage facility that's already there?
No, this
This
is the
white-
this
this
is the
white-
storage facility.
Oh, this is,
Yeah.
oh, okay, sorry, so this is the storage facility right here, okay.
Right.
And then this is building one?
That would be building one, that's the commercial building, that's a contractor's building, and then the other one's a contractor's building.
Okay, the two?
I'm sorry.
Building two?
That's
Yes.
building two.
And this is building three?
Three.
Okay. So this here is this road leading into the middle school?
Correct.
Okay, and then this white,
That's the existing driveway.
okay, so that's the one right now that goes into the property if you were going to, so, for example, if I were going to use your storage facility for
You'd
my
come in that
personal
driveway.
use, I would come in this way,
Yeah.
and then I would park, what, over here?
For the storage facility, you would enter here, they have parking up in front here.
Oh,
So
I
this
would-
is the storage facility site, they have their own parking both in the front and in the back.
So the parking, the people would come
There's
in
an entry,
and
yep,
take a sharp left, and they're parking
there's parking
those.
spaces there, or they go up this way.
So these slash marks are parking spaces, or no?
Out, right here, see those lines? There's a couple
A
spaces right
couple,
there.
okay, there's a couple there. Or if not, I can go all the way around the back and park back here?
If you're, my understanding is if you have tenant space in there, you can. If you're signing up to create
you'd have to
space,
come
then
in
you
the
park
front.
in the front.
Okay, I understand that, thank you. Okay, one of my, so this first building, I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much time.
No, it's good.
No, please.
It's okay?
Yes,
Okay, 'cause
yes.
so this building here, you said, I'm sorry, is gonna be a what building?
That's the commercial building,
Okay, and what's
likely
gonna go
retail.
in there?
Huh?
What's gonna go in there? Who's gonna be in there?
Well, that's what we're gonna find out, but
Oh, you don't know
likely
yet.
retail on the first floor and office above.
Retail, like a little shop or store or
Yeah.
bakery, okay. And then on the second floor would be
Likely office.
office space,
Yeah.
okay. And these people would park right, probably here and here?
And then all in here.
Oh, all back in here. Okay, now we move on to this second building, which is a what building?
That's a contractor's facility.
This, is that the same as this? I don't know
No.
the terminology. So
No.
contractor meaning if I were.
Might be a plumber, a landscaper,
I got you,
a
electrician,
woodworker,
something like
that
that.
type of thing.
So in other words, this group of people who are, say, I'm gonna say in the trades, are going to rent condos
In those-
inside
yeah.
here. Is there 4 of them? 1, 2, 3, 4?
There could be 4 units in that building, yeah.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
gonna look kinda like this.
Okay, I've got,
I don't know whether that's this building or that
Yeah,
building.
I don't
They're
either.
very
That's-
similar.
right, okay.
That's
So-
building two.
All right, so what this is gonna look like is kind of just a, it's not gonna, how do you make that aesthetically pleasing? Because that's a big thing for me. You know what I mean? Is this gonna look like something you see over off of, no offense, but, you know, an area where people don't wanna see what's there because it's gonna be used for trucks and stuff like that?
That's why we're trying to, from the viewpoint of these buildings, those will in all likelihood have more of appearance than this. This will have more of a detailed,
So this is the one that's gonna be wooden, this number 1?
Right.
wooden frame, but not wooden
Oh,
outside.
not wooden outside?
No, there
Oh,
might be
okay.
we might take some of the stonework that's part of this and create access on that building.
Okay.
So this will be a mix of kind of new architecture. These buildings will look more similar to this because they don't have the
Okay.
commercial element.
And
of
again,
it.
this is West Union, so you can still see building 2 from West Union Street?
There are
Well,
houses
you got,
here.
you got a
Oh,
house
this is where the
there.
people live?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Those-
now I see where you're going, okay.
Yeah, so this
So they're in
won't,
behind?
you won't really
Yes.
notice this from West Union because of the
Okay, gotcha,
houses.
gotcha, okay, I understand. And the people here are going to be, will they have, as some people have mentioned, will they have trucks?
They may have
So
trucks
will they
in
be
the
putting them in
building
there?
or immediately in front of their door,
So
but
they-
that's it.
And they'd be parking back here for their
Yes.
trucks?
Yeah.
So they wouldn't be seen from the road?
No.
No, okay. And they would have offices there too for them, their own
We
personal
talked about the
use?
mezzanine space
Yeah.
within those 20 by 25 in each one of those 4 bays.
Okay.
Yes, they've got a small second floor along the back half
Oh,
where there's offices. So there'd be office along this part, and this would
Okay.
be giant garage bays for their trucks.
okay. And then now we go over here,
It's the same,
which is building
essentially the
3.
same thing turned this
same
way.
concept, so there'll be
Just more
trucks in
bays.
there? There'll be trucks like big trucks, small trucks, like trucks
They
that,
could be big trucks.
they could
yes.
be big trucks too, okay. And those people would park,
Again,
Is
there's
it 1,
parking
2,
in
3,
front of,
4?
there's parking in front of each unit, there's parking spaces there, there's gonna be parking there, there's parking here.
okay.
And these
this
are,
ca-
these up here, this is,
What are those? Yeah.
storage bins for like, crushed rock, mulch, things that
Oh, okay.
contractors would use in
But this
landscaping.
cannot be seen from 135,
No,
this building nor the back of it.
no, that's.
Okay, and this is just a border mark right here?
Yeah.
This isn't any
The-
street or anything
It's a
like that?
No,
property,
the-
that's a
the-
property line.
It's a property
it's a
line,
property
okay,
line,
I
yep.
understand, okay. All right,
So that back building is probably 300 feet from West Union.
And this
300.
building here is also about 8 feet below this grade. This building, so the
Yeah.
40 feet that's referenced, or 40 feet plus that's referenced, this is actually,
they're gonna be lower than that?
it's gonna be 8 feet lower
Lower
than this,
than-
hence the wall, right? So some
Oh.
of the building it won't be as tall because
Okay.
it'll be suppressed.
Okay, now that I've had a chance to see it, thank you, close. Okay, so, please bear with me for a moment. So one of the things now, so, what will be going in and out of the property then? Trucks will be going in and out, cars will be going in and out? Okay, and pretty much during the day, they'll probably be all gone. Now, the people who are coming in to use the storage facility for their personal use, they'll be also going in and out, and they're all going in and out of that one little area. That concerns me, because I go by it every day and look at it and say, how are people gonna get in and out of here with the middle school here? And that's a crazy thing. Cirrus down here, I think there's a big safety issue there, coming in and out. The other thing, you said potentially 5 buildings. That was something you said earlier. You said 4,
Well,
potentially
there's
5.
two storage buildings in those 3, so that's 5.
Oh, so you're counting the, okay, you're counting the original storage, because I guess, I didn't think you said you had anything to do with the storage facility.
We've sold off that portion of the site. They're
Oh, okay,
building
so
one, they
it's-
have the right to build another one, if they do another
Who,
storage.
who has the right to build another one?
The existing storage company has
Yeah.
rights to that area, that second building.
Do you see this as-
Just
Well,
go.
yeah,
I'm sorry, I don't wanna take up your time.
No, this is actually important for people to understand. This is the building
That's
that-
existing
that's-
now.
that they're finishing up the construction on.
Right,
It's already permitted. It's in
Right,
white
right.
because it's not part of this current
right, right,
application.
I understand that, yeah.
As a part of this permit, they also applied to build a smaller building here,
Oh, okay. I
which
didn't
is
know
also shown. That,
Will it be- it
but
won't
there's
be
been no
s-
construction on that.
that. But it's
So,
allowed, it's been
allowed,
accepted.
it's completely through the planning board. All
Okay.
they have to do is file a building permit and go out and build it.
As long as the use is in line with the,
Yeah.
the use.
Yeah, if
It's
they
a
want-
storage facility,
Yeah, if they
yes.
wanna do something other than what the plan said, then they have to come back.
Okay, but when you say storage facility for the general public,
Yeah,
The
self-storage.
Not
facility,
for-
yes, yes.
not for
Yeah.
builders,
Mini
etc.
Same
self-storage.
operator as the main building.
Okay, so who owns all this property? Is it a whole group of owners who own various
Mr.
parts of it?
Rodenheiser owns all what you see in color.
Well,
And-
like the
and
gray and
that's
the
his
pink?
condominium aspect, and the storage facility owns, as part of the condominium, all the area in white, with the exception of the driveway.
Okay, so Mr. Odeneiser doesn't own the white storage facility anymore?
The storage buildings, no.
Okay. All right, sorry. Okay, so the 81 parking spaces, possibly 82 that you mentioned, are going to be used by everybody on this lot, meaning
No,
that?
just
no.
those 3 buildings.
Oh, just those 3 buildings, they're the only ones who can use it?
The storage facility has their own previously
The
approved
little,
parking
the little ones in the back, okay.
in the front.
Oh, in the front, sorry about that. Okay, I have a question about, and maybe I don't have to ask it, but let me ask anyway. What about noise? Trucks going in and out and up and down, and I guess I was envisioning bigger trucks.
Trucks going to and from the site will have noise truck. Everything else, and their nature of no repairs, nothing, anything else, with the exception of inside the building.
So it's complete storage, that's all they're doing in there is storage and their offices. This is, their
They may
work
be
going on?
working on the truck in the building.
Oh, they might be.
But they won't be working on the truck or any activities outside of the building, with the exception of that, creating those storage bins.
Okay, all
But
right.
no truck repairs outside,
No?
none of that stuff. No.
Okay, so it's not like a, what'd you call it, a
A repair
garage,
shop?
repair
No.
shop? No,
No.
okay. Let's see, I have a question. Oh, I know. As you probably know, I mean, if you're the attorney, you're at a lot of these meetings, the town's been trying.
Too many, by the way.
And I'm sure you have, yeah, I see you. The town has been trying very hard to make things look nice, for lack of a better word. And I think that architect, I'm sorry, Tricia, said, she was mentioning, like, you want to be a good neighbor, you want, like, even now, I have to say, I don't know who was the person, I know you 2 gentlemen have something to do with this, but when I drove down 135 and I saw that storage facility when it first went up, and first of all, you're shocked because it's so huge, sitting right on the corner, right out as far as it can go. Are you gonna repaint the orange doors? Or are
That's-
those staying?
Those
That's-
plans have been previously approved,
Oh.
that's part of the architecture of that building. And again, that's.
They need an architect on this
Yeah, I
plan,
agree.
I'll tell you right now.
That wasn't us.
The
We
colors-
didn't do the
colors
architecture of
are
that
bad, I
building.
agree.
It's horrible, I
I'm
mean,
in a little bit of a wrestling match over it right now myself.
I keep saying, no, it's just, that's just the base, they're gonna repaint them, okay. So,
If the town wanted to do something about that, you might wanna send somebody out there now to talk to him about changing some of that color.
okay, so this is somebody else who's in charge of that building now, somebody
The owner of
completely
that
different,
building is the
okay.
person.
So that would be the person, all right. And, as I said, the biggest thing, and I agree completely with Tricia, that you know, you want to be a good neighbor. I don't want to drive by there and go, oh, this is so ugly. And so a lot of the things are hidden a little more than I thought they were going to be. But I'm just so worried about safety. That area is just a nightmare when you're trying to drive. You know, I don't care what hours. Yes, it's worse at some times than others, but I'm very concerned about the school coming out. I'm very concerned that this is just such a small little area to come in and out. Right next to it, you've got Cirrus down the street. Everything gets backed up forever, and people are saying this is really a nightmare. I know you're not the parking police here or the driving police, but it is something I think you might have to take into consideration. Is this the best way to use this land in terms of getting out this little way? I know you can't go out the Cirrus way, but this is really, it's gonna create a mess.
That's the frontage of the lot on West Union Street. We're stuck with that location. We have done site distance studies, and they all meet standard. We'll get you a copy of that. And again, the uses we're proposing are probably the less intensive traffic generating uses than you could make of that site, which is zoned for, you know, complete office, complete retail, which would have far more impact than what we
Yeah,
got.
no, I understand that. I guess it's just, I don't want it to turn out like, I'm sorry if I offend anybody, I don't mean to, like Blandon Ave or something like that over in Framingham. That's just a lot of metal buildings, we need things like that. I mean, people have to work there, but
And that's
just,
why we're going back to create some better pictures for that.
okay, and it is tall, I will throw that in too, but please, aesthetically, we just need something decent there that doesn't create a safety hazard. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I think at this point, if I could have a couple minutes, the applicant has done a tech review and is with the town through the planning office has hosted a tech review and met with the fire department, the police department, the DPW, myself, the Board of Health, I believe, was there. And so, you know, all, you know, each department, each office had some things to say. I think number one was DPW had wanted to kind of look at the traffic and the fire. Wanted to look at the turning radiuses of the tower truck that, you know, kind of fall into Ashland's, that Ashland kind of has. Last night, the application did go to the design review committee to look at the architecture of the building. And then also the applicant has been in front of the Conservation Commission. And then I believe they're going back into the Conservation Commission, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's September 11th. No.
I think it's a week before. The design review is the 11th.
Okay, the design review is going to be on the 11th. I think it's appropriate for the applicant to request a continuance from this planning board on this application. Right now, our next meeting is going to be September 12th. We already have 2 public hearings dated, you know, on the docket, on the agenda for that night. The next following meeting would be September 26th. So, you know, it's up to the board and through the chairman of where really does this fit in best on the application. And I would also ask the applicant if they could think about everything, but I think September 26th is probably going to be the best date to put this on the agenda.
So I think we should continue to the 26th thing, because we have too much homework as far as the design stuff,
Okay.
and it's not likely that it's all gonna get wrapped up satisfactory to
Yeah,
everyone. I think that's obviously the most important thing here.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
And then
I wouldn't
you're
want you
pressed
to-
for time too.
Yeah, I wouldn't want you to come here and, you know, pay your people to come here and
Yeah.
not have everything ready, so
Yeah.
it's, yeah. You wanna be paid, but,
Who's coming here?
yeah.
That makes more sense, we have more time.
With that said, I think we can, well, obviously the board can vote on that. However, I would ask Peter if you could send myself and Emma a letter
I
via
already know
email.
from last night, so I'll.
Yeah, just a request that we could file with the town clerk, which so we can kind of fall within the regulations of chapter 40A. And then in the time being, I think it would be great to set up a site visit and walk all the properties. that really have been represented here in tonight's discussion, and that's something that I can do, or we can kind of set on a schedule. But I would probably say it makes sense, since we are going to continue it after Labor Day, or the 26th, but to set up a site visit after Labor Day at a time when maybe you feel it would be appropriate. And I think that's the best way to kind of move ahead.
Send something out, we'll make ourselves available whatever time is convenient.
Yeah,
for you
whatever
folks.
works for you guys, fine.
Okay. And so before the meeting ends, if you are interested in going on a site visit, and I'm pointing this and I'm making this comment for the folks here in the back, the residents in the back. If you would like to join us, can you please give me your contact info or email address that I could kind of communicate with a group of you, or if you would like to pick somebody who would be the main point of communication, I think that would also be appropriate in many instances dealing with the planning board. So with that said, I would just ask the planning board to maybe accept the request of a continuance from the applicant, and continue the public hearing for this application to September 26th, please.
At 7:15?
At 7:15.
Okay. Is there a motion to continue at the applicant's request to September 26th at 7:15?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Our next item is a bond for Ashland Solar LLC. We need to accept a bond per condition 4 of the planning board decision. This is for the solar farm on the MBTA cap, and on the Nyanza cap, as well as along the MBTA access road.
So they've produced the bond, we need to accept their bond.
Correct. So this bond, so I've kind of dived into this application a little bit.
Pardon me.
Yep.
Can we keep it quiet in the room? If you want to have conversations, if you can move out in the hall, we have other business to conduct. Thank you.
Mr. Rodenheiser, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just kind of jumping in to the solar, the Nyanza solar cap, in the proposed project that is actually starting up. And actually, this past week, I did have a site visit with DEP and the EPA, and we all kind of walked the site and take a look at it. So obviously, there's 2 arrays on the site. Array number 1. Excuse me, Mark, you can't shut that door. For public regulations, it has to be open.
Open it.
Open it. Yes.
Oh,
Uh,
rats.
Sorry, that's just a public rule by a public meeting open door policy. So with that said, there's two arrays. The first array is actually on the Nyanza cap, and the DEP and the EPA actually hold a bond for the dismantling of that array in the case of decommissioning. And so really that bond, and that bond was submitted by the applicant, CS Solar, and that was accepted by DEP. The bond that we need to approve of here tonight is for array number 2, and that was due to condition number 4 of the planning board's decision, and that is in the amount of $80,000, $494 of surety, which is held. This bond, since I got here, was kind of going back and forth, and it has been approved at this time by town council, and so tonight, if it's accepted by the planning board and the chairman signs off on it, which would be Preston, then this is actually, it's a legal document. Everything's been notarized. The town, what I would do then, I would scan it in. I would send them a hard copy of a final copy, and then I myself in the town hall hold this bond. And I usually would give it to the treasurer's office, and they would keep it in the safe. And then and if there was ever a point in time where that solar array was decommissioned and the owner walked away from it, the town could therefore take this bond and do the work itself. So this is very typical for any solar project within Massachusetts. But for the most part, it's in the amount that the planning board requested, and the bond has been approved by town council. So I would just ask for a motion to accept the bond and then for the chairman's signature.
I make a motion to accept the bond.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 5-0. And are you notarizing this?
Your name does have to be notarized.
Okay.
Nope, but I am a notary. If you ever need anything,
Good to know.
let me know.
All right.
It's a funny thing with
This,
subdivisions.
there seems no pattern as to which documents need to be notarized and which don't. But.
There's no rhyme or reason.
All right. Other items, co-urbanized discussion.
Yeah, so at the last meeting, we did talk about co-urbanize and the uses of co-urbanize historically within the planning office. And so Emma has actually put together a kind of compare and contrast sheet of what co-urbanize offers and then what the town's website offers. I know at the last meeting, we kind of talked about this a little bit. I'm not too sure if any of the I hope some of the planning board members went on and looked at co-urbanize, but then also for 81 West Union Street, we did load up all the documents to the website and we sent out that link, which I think was fairly clean.
It worked easy.
It worked pretty
Well
easy. The two differences between the abilities of co-urbanize and the website, Emma kind of notes here. The number one thing is the overall arching issue is the cost. Obviously, the town website is free. We already pay for the town website as a town, and Emma and myself maintain the planning board's website, and so we can upload documents free of charge for the applicant. And so we could either reduce that co-urbanized fee and/or increase the planning board's fee. Taking in what that co-urbanized fee would have been. So that would be a conversation to have. But then the other thing that the website does not have is public comment. Now, this can be seen in two areas. I think in co-urbanize, you can just put in a public comment and, maybe other people in the public could see it. However, right now on the town website, if you have any public comments regarding a project, you would just email myself directly and or you could email the planning board through the planning board's email, which then is kicked to all planning board members. So therefore, that is one option. All emails that I receive from the public, typically, I will print out, or Emma and I will print out. We'll save it to the folder, into the file. We'll print it out for our hard files, and then also all emails are put in front of the board at that time of the public hearing. And so the planning board.
Can I make a comment about co-urbanized comments?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, so with that said, if there's a comments made on a project, the planning board sees all comments. And at that, I think those are the 2 points that I see, and then Emma, you can speak.
Yeah, so you may have already covered this, about the public giving comments on projects. When we came in, our predecessors had a statement on the website saying that comments on co-urbanized were not public comments. So they are not included in official records. And so that is just a consideration where there's these kind of comments out there that are, not necessarily in the official record. So just something to consider.
And either way, you guys have to upload all the information, right?
Yeah, no matter what.
Either
we're
paying co-urbanize,
uploading
you still have
documents.
to upload, do the work.
Co-urbanized does not upload the documents for us.
Yes, exactly. They don't
Yeah.
do, they just have a space for you.
Now, having looked at,
So,
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Having looked at the town website where we've put some of the projects up, I think the co-urbanize is a little better organized, but it's not that much better organized.
And we can evolve.
And exactly. So I don't see that there's a big advantage to us continuing with co-urbanize.
No.
Okay.
That's my-
And then what about the fee? We could still charge a fee to post when people apply, or is that just gonna be?
I think you could charge a posting fee, a
something like
technology
that? We're
fee.
still doing work and.
I think
figure it
that's
out.
something that can be kind of seen, that can be answered.
I think we should look at our fee system and
See what,
pull out the co-urbanized fee, but maybe look at the cases, the ones that are where co-urbanized would have been charged and raise those fees slightly, just raise the base fees just to include the extra work that goes into this.
Yes.
So it's not an explicit separate fee, but it's part of the overall fee. So, well, it saves applicants money, but it rolls it all into the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's not seen as a separate fee.
Okay, I think at the next meeting, I think I'll take a look at from what I'm collecting. Joe, do you have any comment?
Yeah, my question was only, co-urbanized is a software we're subscribed to, so did we sign a multi-year
No.
thing with that? No. Just
So, correct me if
procurement.
I'm wrong.
30 days notice.
So it's a 30 days notice to
great.
terminate the contract.
Yeah, I just was afraid we signed like a 24-month contract and we got another 12 months.
No, that came up one of our main conversations just as we started the process. But yes, to terminize co-urbanized, it's 30-day notice.
That's great.
And then, I think I'm not going to make that decision now, but I think it makes sense to have a plan in place, at least with the permitting in the fee schedule. So I think at the next meeting, I'll bring a copy of the recently revised fee schedule, which I think was done in 2018.
Yep.
And then we can kind of take a look at that. But I think at this point, I agree with you, Dale. The how we create the website. I think with Emma and myself here now, we can look at the board. The board can look at its own website and say, we like this, we do not like this. We want to move in this direction. We like this setup versus that setup. I'm not a website expert, and I would take any opinions or if anybody does know websites better than anybody than me. But
Easy to navigate.
that's the number one thing is.
It was-
Because
that's
trying to find stuff.
That's definitely come up, and I think, there'll have to be a little bit of publicity around if we move away from co-urbanized to the website, and maybe wrapped up in that, we can talk about, go to the planning department instead of the planning board,
Yes.
and try to make that clear, because I do know that some people still look to co-urbanized for updates.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to make sure
We
people
should
are
also
aware.
take everything that's on co-urbanized and move it
Yeah,
over to the town
definitely.
website so that we don't lose anything. 'Cause
Yes.
People like to be able to go back and look at the old stuff.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Is there a way to put, when they go on right now, when we're canceling and changing over, when they click on the co-urbanized, it comes up and says, we're moving everything? Or is that?
That's a great question about
I mean,
what,
because
if
it's-
any,
we
like,
put a
presence
link
we'll
to
have
co-urbanized
after.
On our website, right?
Mhm.
So is there a way to put an change that link to go to our page that says we're changing it, click here for now, and then it goes?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
I
no,
think-
all of our
yeah.
links would be changed,
Yeah.
and maybe in that
So that
30-day
there was a
period, we can
notice,
put a
and
link
when
on
people start clicking
co-urbanized.
on it, they're gonna say,
Oh,
now
yeah.
it's gonna be on our website.
I think we
And
would go
then-
to the current development page, and then on that page we would have a list of all the projects. Mhm.
So as long as easy to find stuff, that's the.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we probably
and it's
want.
current, is it current?
While we're on this topic, we probably want a very close link between the planning board page and the planning department
Yeah.
page.
Yep.
If we're putting, say, everything under the planning department page, then the planning board page, which lists the members and contact information, would say, for current projects,
Click.
go to the planning department
Yes.
page.
We
with
can,
the
we can
link.
have a direct link to that
Yeah,
current
exactly.
Yeah,
case page,
Exactly.
and that would, hopefully.
Yeah.
so Just
Make it easy to get
evolve too,
to.
Take
Yeah,
comments and
absolutely.
evolve, and make it.
It evolves.
Streamlined, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna move forward with that a little bit deeper, I would say, as that kind of moves forward.
Good.
And then administrative matters, I can tell you that we've had a couple pre-construction meetings this week. We had a pre-construction meeting for Robert Hill Way, this past week, which was, however, I can tell you that the developer is still waiting to close on the property, due to some grants, some federal aid grants that have come in. So that's the last I've kind of heard about that. We did have a pre-construction meeting for the solar development, on the 2 arrays on the landfill, the Nyanza landfill. DEP and the EPA were there. I've also received copies of all the permits, through both departments, DEP and EPA. So that is going to be highly monitored, obviously, because of the history of that site. But they seem to be well aware of that. Also, EPA has a third party, I would say, project manager that is going to oversee all construction on that site for the EPA. There'll be nothing that nothing that is going to actually break the surface of that whole cap. All of the solar arrays actually sit on, I would say, round concrete foundations. All vehicles that enter on top of that cap will be track vehicles. There'll be no tires. And so
I think they're putting a layer of gravel, all the driving areas and the whole thing too, so they're not going down, they're going up.
They're going up. Yep. And then also just to give everyone the heads up on the main entrance to the two arrays will be off the MBTA access road, and so they'll probably if you do go over there, they
The
will.
main construction entrance?
Right now, there's two entrances there. One is going to be through McGunkle Road.
Yeah.
That is going to be, I would say, that's how I entered the site the other day. But for the solar array 1 and 2, they're going to need, I would say, two entrances, and so they are going to start to cut in off of the MBTA access road.
So one of the items we specifically worked on with that decision was trying to really get them to pay attention to timing of when they're gonna, if they're loading materials, doing it at off hours, having the police detail. That will be a total disaster if they just try to do that at 7:30 a.m.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
So
The,
They need to know
the
when the
police were
trains are.
there. I've worked hand in hand with those folks, and so I will reiterate that.
Yeah, they need to coordinate with the train
They-
schedules.
Yeah, we definitely kind of talked about that. Sergeant Ed Burnham from the police department, kind of who's a traffic officer, we kind of talked about that. The one
because like that.
Oh, yeah, that's a
the
huge-
the trains have riding them for the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, there's been a huge increase in usage, especially because of the MBTA's changing fees at other lots on the system, on the Worcester system. I mean, our station is full every
day. Yeah, I go down there. You can't find the parking spot. Yeah, because I think we're on that outer edge of zone
It's
3.
a big lot.
So
There's 1,000 cars down there.
So everybody from zone 4 drives to zone 3 to pay the cheaper rate.
Yeah, they also changed the rates on the lots. They marked up the rates on the Southborough lot to drive people to our lot because our lot's bigger.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
They made that lot more expensive than ours to push activity through.
So that is happening. On a side note, on a positive note, Citizens Energy is the developer. Citizens Energy was founded by Robert Kennedy?
Yeah.
Joe Kennedy III, and he used to do Joe for Oil. If you remember that whole program, Joe for Oil, and so now Joe Kennedy has developed Joe for Sun, and so Joe Kennedy and Citizens Energy have developed. I think this is one of 5 solar landfill arrays that they're actually putting in the state. And so the way they're nonprofit, they're selling the energy back to some towns, they're selling the energy back to the energy producers, but then also they are coming up with this Joe for Sun program, which is very similar to Joe for Oil, which is helping rate to payers and really kind of give folks a $300 annual stipend to help pay for their electrical bill. And so the town of Ashland and citizens of Ashland will be able to kind of apply. Everyone can apply. However, since we're a host community, we're going to start rolling out the program here. And I'm going to kind of go down to the senior center and hopefully with Citizens Energy to hold a little kind of meeting to educate some folks about Joe for Sun and the possibility to apply for this $300 voucher. So that's kind of a good little story along with the solar project. Other than that, things are busy. A application at 310 Pond Street which was the old Blockbuster building, was filed the other day, and that is going to appear on the September 12th Planning Board meeting. They are looking to put a restaurant into that space.
Now, just one real quick note. Everybody, I'm sure, is happy about this. The 128 Main Street siding colors, I think they came to a decision. Do we have to, is that gonna have to be put on the agenda?
So-
Because I think we approved it and it was blue, but we put a stipulation that if they decide to change the colors,
Yeah, in fact, they were,
it has to come back to us,
In fact-
cause I think they've reached the color and they're starting to work on the building, so,
the agreement was that they were going to talk to the town manager
which they did.
and then show us.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then if it's
Which they
different,
haven't.
and if it's different, then we approve it,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I'll send out I read the language. We had a pre-construction meeting for 128 Main. That project is also moving ahead. The construction fence is going up, and they're
I
actually
noticed that.
But I just
capping
know if we
utilities.
have to get that on, I think they've come, I talked to Mike, and I think they've come to a color scheme.
The way I read the condition within the decision, it was fairly wide open. It didn't say it had to come to the planning board for review. It pretty much said that they have to come to the planning board for review, and to really, I would say, to inform the planning board of the color change.
So we don't have to vote on it
It was
or
approved
anything.
with the colors we saw, but if they wanna change it, they have to
Correct.
come
Come back
before
and-
us.
Yes.
So they wanna change it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, I think they should come back and just
Yes.
say,
Mhm.
these are the colors we wanna do,
And we
and,
say yes
and
or
we-
no.
and we
Mhm.
presumably will say yes, especially if the town manager likes it.
Who was the most vocal, opinion
Yeah.
on that one?
I will put that on for the September 12th, just to kind of
Okay.
knock that out of the way.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing for September 12th is we are coming up on the deadline for the warrant for Fall Town Meeting.
Yes.
And I know we want to put in the changes to the use table as demonstrated by the application tonight. And I don't know that we have anything else for Fall Town Meeting.
The only thing that I myself was looking to put in is probably something that I would wait for annual town meeting for.
Okay.
I have a farm porch.
I don't think that's going to be ready for fall.
Farm porches?
Yeah.
We'll work on that.
I've got
one.
it, other towns already have it, and I
Okay.
have the home.
Is there anything we should put in about, and this is just, again, coming out of the meeting tonight, about height restrictions, except by special permit? A different height restriction?
It's a good thing to talk about. I don't think I don't think the time between now and Fall Town Meeting
Allows it
we
to-
get the right answer.
well, we need.
We should start working on this stuff though.
We gotta schedule our public hearings on these changes, the use table changes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, but September 18th is when the selectmen want to have all the warrant articles turned into them by. So, we should get at least a draft of this to them in mid-September.
Can we do that, but
but
concurrent with our public hearing on it?
Yeah, we don't have to have our public hearing before then. Our
No.
public hearing will probably be in October.
Yeah, typically the planning board will submit the article to the ZB. Every town works differently, so I'm not going to speak on how the town of Ashland
Typically,
works.
we can just say, we have a zoning article on changing the use table, and we don't have the text ready, and they'll put in a placeholder for us. So, but the closer we are to ready by their September 18th deadline.
So, just on your question about height, I mean, do you have specific zones and specific things that you wanna propose, or?
Well, I'd have to look, I guess it was just while we're looking at this at the same time, I'm just wondering, even if it's, a temporary thing that we put in place, like they put in place the, whatever the bylaw was that we.
Redevelopment bylaw?
Right, like just to give us a little window of time to look at things more closely as kind of a stopgap, so some of these height things don't happen before we're quite ready to nail it down. I think if there's some means we can put in, even as like a temporary measure, that we have to approve it and look at it first, you know, I think it would be popular, given what's happening on 135.
You know, I think what we can do is look at the overlay bylaw, which allows the height, and then we can just edit that one, you know, if we wanna edit that.
Yeah, I don't know the bylaws well enough to say this is where you do it, but.
Yeah, well, the thing is, we've got the downtown zoning, we have the Pond Street zoning, we have
I
commercial
think
highway
downtown is
zoning.
already taken care of,
Yeah,
right?
but all of these have different, there's so many different places depending on whether you're looking at it this part of town or that part of town.
Right, but you
So
could
let's pick
name,
one.
you could name all of those. You could
Could.
name, in these 4 zones, the height restriction is for the next 12 months or 24 months is this, unless it goes through,
Can you
Special
put in,
permit.
can you put,
yeah.
my only question on that is, can you put in temporary restrictions like that on height, on building height? in
Get
your
sunset
zoning?
stuff, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask this though?
Just wait.
Yep, okay.
I think you can. I think the cleanest way and the simplest way maybe just to go through that overlay district, which is on the Pond Street overlay district, and just edit that height, just manually. Not manually, but say, you know, in the case of, you know, a special permit shall be required for any height of any building above the height of, and say, you know, if 35 feet. Because 35 feet is your residential from, say, I think it's 35 feet. I don't know the bylaws well
35
enough.
feet is usually typical for
It's ti-
residences.
yeah, so by law, yeah, so up to, you know, up to the ridge line of the roof, and so we could say a special permit is required in this district for any building over 35 feet,
So, yeah, if there's something. we
within
can
the
put-
overlay district.
If there's something we can put in simply until we have a chance to look at these things more deeply, I think it could save us some headaches over the next year for whatever might pop up.
I would kind of like to get it right, or get something that is close enough to right that, you know, we can leave it for a while.
I-
But, you know.
I mean,
I don't know.
to me, it gives us some bearing or leeway on, it's a stopgap. I mean, it puts it to a permit, requiring us to approve a height over a certain, wherever it sets.
A special permit has a lot more meat behind it
Yeah.
than a site plan approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's.
I mean, I
just
just
did
like,
that,
to
didn't we
get
just
it
do that
right
for
though,
the
Preston,
downtown?
it just, I wanna get it right too, but I also think there's a theme of height concerns on
Yeah.
repetitive projects.
Well, let's put discussion of warrant article on building heights
Okay,
on the September 12th agenda.
okay.
Look at
And-
it before then to
And then if
have
we
a,
can individually look over that and maybe get some suggestion for where to go with that.
is it allowable, like that if Joe and I work together or whatever to?
Yeah, as long as it's
Yeah.
not
Just-
not a
Just-
quorum.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to
Yeah.
get on the same
If
page.
if
with
you
some of
and
these
Joe
things.
wanna work together, then don't
Bring it.
discuss it with any other
Okay.
members outside of the meeting,
I
and
wasn't going
you're
to.
good.
Now, Mr. Chairman, can I go?
Yes.
Ooh, I know what's going
All set?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, through you, through the planner, can you lift up what I gave you before the meeting started on paper clip in front of you?
Mark, yes, you gave me this.
Yes. I want to work with you people on this,
Okay.
and I have more at home. It's a 200-page, but what you gave me, I gave part to the sustainability
Okay.
on some areas, and now I'm giving you that part back. What's circled around and squared off is by special permits to work together on what you're talking about now.
Okay. Well, I think, Mark, I'm gonna need a little bit more time than the time of this meeting to
Yes.
look at this. And you know where my office is. And
Yes.
I'm more than happy to meet with you
Yes.
and review this.
And I said, select board meeting, when I first had it in front of everybody, when you gave it to me, I went to the small room and took an hour to break it all down.
It's gonna probably take me more than an hour to break this
Yes.
all down, Mark.
And I have more pages at home. That's only like about a third.
Well, I'll take the first swing at the first 162 that you gave me right here.
Well, it's not a full 162. It's condensed. But what it is, what you're talking about is the, not just the height, but it's overall bylaw, bring them up and upgrade them to economically, well, better off for the town to go forward. Because it's gonna work if you work it all together as boards. And I can bring more in and talk in front of your board, or in front of any of your boards, to be together on this. Because if it's not working together, it's gonna stay behind, and I don't wanna stay behind. Thank you.
Can I just ask 2 questions? Yeah. Just very, very quickly. So what's the timing on groundbreaking for the solar? What are they thinking?
So the other day, they're probably groundbreaking. They want to start tree clearing probably in the next 2 weeks, I would say. They were surveying the property. They were putting out the wetland, the silt socks, and they were putting out the silt socks, and they were doing the wetland flagging, which I know. And then they were also marking out some of the trees that need to be kind of taken down that overhang the roadway. They're still starting to kind of mobilize. They have not filed for building permits, or I think building permits have not been issued yet for that project. So they are starting to move along to get kind of things rolling. The most amazing part of the project is they're going to be in and out within 4 months.
That's cool.
They want to be out the door by the end of the new year, I would say.
And I just had
Okay, sound good?
a quick question. On some of the things like the minutes and stuff like that, I know like the Board of Selectmen does like a consent agenda or something where they group together the minutes and and then they bring it up and they just vote on the whole package. Is
Okay.
that something that could streamline our sitting around reading minutes and approving minutes and
We could do
other
that if
things that-
people will actually read the minutes before the meetings, which is the reason we haven't
yes.
done it that way. And if we could
And
all.
they put like small stuff that's just pretty much obvious on, you know, things that we're doing on a, all in one little group and you approve the whole set. Just something to think about.
So the solar thing is gonna start clearing the next month and done by January ideally is their goal, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then 128 Main, I see the construction fence up. When is that? Like, when are they thinking for demo on that? I'm just trying to, it's just good to know, like, time-wise.
I'll probably say that is going to probably start demo probably after Labor Day.
So September.
So they're working at cutting and capping all the utilities. I think they actually completed all of that. They're getting all the letters into the building commissioner. I know they have to put up they have to finish putting up I think they finished up putting the erosion control in the silt socks, and I think they're actually working on finishing up the construction fence.
They gotta put the protection on that tree.
The protection on the tree. And actually, that's a great question that I have for you. Which tree?
That gigantic, it's not on their property, but it's that gigantic, oak or, which, I don't.
So it's
right
really
the
on the
corner here.
Santander property.
I think it's on the Santander property, but we
Okay.
explicitly wanted that to be protected.
Okay, because I read that in the decision specifically, and I asked which tree, and
It's the only big one.
it's the only big one. Okay, so I can follow up with Carlos and make sure that that tree is protected. And then there was a takings of 2 feet, which I had a question on, which I reached out to the attorney,
The
Phil
town is
Jack,
taking
on.
it, right?
Yes, however, I don't know if mechanically it has happened, but I spoke with the engineers from, not Beals and Thomas, from the streetscaping project today, BSC, and we do need all that 2 feet. So that project, the whole streetscape project is starting to kind of really kind of move forward, and at a next upcoming meeting when I can give everyone an update on that. So that really is starting kind of to roll in the right direction. But yeah, I would say the beech tree, not the beech tree. So it's a big tree
I'll point it out to you on the way
between
out.
the Sundader in the property, 128.
It's the one large tree to the right of the building that
Okay.
sits between the Santander and the house.
Mm-hmm.
And we explicitly in our decision had said it needs to have the wood.
The
and
wood and the
against
protection of the drip line.
lower-
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I read that, and that decision was fairly well crafted. So, I'm just looking to make sure I'm on the right page.
Okay, so on the solar project, you were saying they're supposed to be done by January.
Mm-hmm.
Are they planting any screening or anything in there? Are they,
So
do they do
right
that
now-
during the winter?
So they want to get it. Yeah. So all the planting that's
They're
going to
gonna do-
happen, they want to get in now and hit this fall planting
Before-
season.
Okay,
And so that's why they're kind of
pushing it along.
they're pushing the tree clearing that has to happen. So there's no clearing for array 1,
Yeah.
which is on top of the fill cap, right? Array 2, which is what we took the bond for decommissioning. There is a good amount of tree clearing, and so it is going to be visually shocking.
Yeah, I think we should put some, I think
So
town
I,
website. we
I'm
should
gonna
something
put up
in there.
I'm gonna probably put up a press release next week.
Yeah.
That project is started because it's gonna be shocking
Yeah.
for people.
We've heard the neighbors on the other proposed project in the RTD, like, some of them were not even aware of that solar, and like, it's gonna be a huge shock.
It's gonna be a big shock for people that drive up and down that MBTA road every day because they're gonna go in with the machine that grabs the tree trunk and cuts it from the bottom and lays the tree down. They're gonna be in and out of there within a week for tree clearing, and they're gonna clear the whole thing out, and then they're gonna
plant the screening. And
Yep, and then they want to plant. They're gonna, take everything as low as they can go. They're gonna get in there and do as much as they can with the stumps, and then they're going to plant grass as much as they can right there to get the fall grass growing season. Yeah,
That's good.
but it's going to be it's going to be visually shocking.
Yeah, because even the screening is going to be small plants and stuff, small tree. They're not going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think front and center on the town website would be good with some visuals, just to
Here's what's
soften the
coming.
impact. I agree. Like,
Okay.
yeah, my
Mhm.
opinion, but.
Mm-hmm. I can, but yeah, no, those are the two major projects that are going to be visually changing the town. Is the 128 Main and then the solar project. Mm-hmm. All right. So the minutes are not part of the packet. Is that correct?
Yes, my apologies.
Okay, so they were emailed out, so, I don't know if people actually read them, and.
I like reading them here usually.
Okay.
I'm sorry I didn't read them. I apologize.
Guys don't like to do homework.
I did read them, but I don't remember.
I know, I
You
feel
don't
like
remember all your
I
edits?
feel like I didn't bring mine along. I feel like I marked
No.
some things.
We can either,
So we'll carry those forward to the
we'll
next
carry
meeting.
those forward to the next meeting.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So it is, unless there's any other announcements,
Then I make a motion to
go ahead.
end this meeting
Second.
at 9, what is it?
42.
42
Yep.
p.m.
Any
Second.
second?
I sound like
All in
Kristen
favor?
from town meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 5-0. Thank you.